Hello everybody and welcome to our podcast called Road to the Ashes, and this is episode 5. Thanks for listening and also thanks for watching. I've got Mark Waugh in the studio with me for this one. I've got a couple of legends on the link as well. I've got one of our living legends all the way from Melbourne, Shane Warne, and also a man that led England to a series win in 2005, their captain, Michael Vaughan. Gentlemen, always great to have you along for this one. Really looking forward to this one, episode 5. Hey, Warney, I'm going to come to you first because 7 players, Aussie superstars, have pulled out of the tour to the West Indies and also Bangladesh. Glenn Maxwell's pulled out, but has he pulled out of your UK 100-ball tournament in your team?
Yeah, g'day, Warney, Junior, BJ, Brendon, Mark, Michael. Look, yeah, unfortunately, Glenn Maxwell has pulled out of the 100. We were really excited to get him when we got him in the draft. And we're pretty excited to get him to see the way he plays. We know he's a match winner and we're excited to have him. But unfortunately, he's pulled out of that and we've now replaced him with Josh Inglis from Western Australia. So we're lucky to have him.
Well, he'd have to pull out, wouldn't he, Junior? Because you can't have Aussie stars pulling out of the West Indies, Bangladesh, and then going and playing the UK. And I'm wondering what's going to happen with the IPL. Surely they can't be playing in that tournament come September now.
Well, look, I know it's tough with bubble and quarantine and multiple players doing these quarantine throughout the year, but country has got to take priority over franchise cricket. That's the simple answer. And Glenn Maxwell, it wouldn't have been possible for him to play in the 100 tournament because he's pulled out of the Caribbean. They're both on at the same time. So, you know, he's made the right decision there. But, you know, your country has got to be the priority for any player.
Michael Vaughan, it's getting to the stage where IPL, I don't know if it's going to go ahead. They're saying it will go ahead in the UAE. But certainly if you've got players playing and missing tours, they can't go to the IPL.
No, you wouldn't have thought so. I mean, I think the seed has been sown for a few years where, you know, players have picked and choose. And I think the boards have allowed them to. I mean, England just recently were going to allow their players to stay at the IPL rather than play a test match against New Zealand at Lords. I know that those 2 test matches weren't in the Future Tours programme, but, you know, I think they're setting a precedent here. Football in the UK pretty much is the Premier League, and then every 2 years the players want to play for their country because there's a Euros or a World Cup. Cricket's going down that channel. You know, it's got to be very, very careful. I do think it's down to the boards of all these national teams to be stronger. They've got to be stronger with the players. And if they want international cricket in 20, 30 years' time to still be the pinnacle, which it is now, and I hope it continues that way, they've got to be stronger with the players to not allow these franchises to take them. I know there's a huge amount of money and we have to be careful about, you know, the amounts of money that these players can earn, and they've got a great carrot to be able to do so. But, you know, international cricket has to stay at number 1. If they're not careful, it will end up like the Premier League football where players pick and choose. As soon as the lesser teams are playing and I guess friendly matches, they pull out of games and they just turn up for the tournaments. And I guess I'm not being disrespectful to some of the countries, but some of these tours aren't quite as pinnacle as some others, and players will pick and choose which tours they're going to go on if they're not careful.
Shane, it's going to be difficult, though, one, isn't it? I mean, the IPL is going to go ahead and it's going to leak a few players out of international duties in other countries.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic to talk about. I think it's, you know, people talk about difficult and things. I think it's pretty simple. I don't begrudge the players getting the money they have. It's fantastic. And if they want to take the money, take the money. But if you want to play cricket for your country and you choose IPL over your country, well, then maybe you have to be punished for a little bit for doing, not punished, that's the wrong word. Maybe then you have to choose because maybe it's worth not picking those guys then. And then, because otherwise, this is going to happen. People are going to rest and miss test matches and miss representing their country to go and play for money. Now, as I said, I do not begrudge. And, you know, it's pretty hard. If someone says, here's $3 million or go away over to somewhere and play for a month and be away for 6 weeks from your family, you know, and a shorter term in IPL, it's a very easy decision to take that money. But if you value yourself as a cricketer and want to test yourself against the best, there's only one spot to do it, and that's at international cricket, and whatever form that is, but especially Test cricket. And if you want to choose the money for IPL, that's fine, no problem. But you might have to wait a few Test matches and you might go down a few rungs no matter how good you are, and because there's always someone that can replace you.
Well, I think Trevor Holmes has said that, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He made a statement there when the squads were announced that he's going to be loyal to players that do choose to play for Australia.
And he should be.
Yeah, no, exactly right. So I think you're going to see that anyway.
I wonder if that's also going to put pressure on a bit like Justin Langer. His contract's due at the end of this Ashes summer's coming up. He can't always pick players out of this West Indies and Bangladesh tour. It's based on results. I mean, does he come under a bit of pressure going, well, hang on, I can't even pick the players I want to pick, and all of a sudden I'm being judged at the end of this Ashes series with his contract?
Yeah, well, he'd love to have his full-strength team in every tournament that Australia play, but reality is it's not going to happen, and Australia do have the depth to cover that. So, yeah, the Justin Langer issue is going to raise its head, I guess, because it has during the winter with the reviews from players and an independent body, but he's going to be there till the end of the summer. He needs to be judged on the T20 World Cup and what happens with the Ashes this summer. And once that's done and dusted, then we judge Justin Langer.
Michael Vaughan, there's been comments about, Justin Langer and the players sort of coming out saying, it's been a little bit tricky in the change room. I mean, are you in favour of a review after every summer and asking the players what they think of the coach?
I mean, the world's gone nuts, hasn't it? I mean, I honestly don't understand all these kind of... it's like asking a Q&A, isn't it, at the end of every series? Do you like the coach? I mean, come on. It's all about the results. It's about results on the pitch. Unfortunately for Australia, the results didn't go the way that they would have liked. Once that happens, obviously in this era, the coach comes under a little bit more pressure, as does the captain, as does the players in the team. What frustrates me a little bit about cricket these days is that we kind of forget to talk about the players. It's always someone else that's to blame. It's either rotation, it's the coach, it's the captain's decision. If you actually look at the players, it's generally the players that haven't performed. And I think there's always an excuse, if you want to use it as a player, that you could blame a coach who's said something to you that you didn't quite like. You know what? Get over it. Get yourself ready. Get yourself ready to play. It's down to you as an individual to perform. And if you can't, ultimately, you haven't played well enough, and that contributes to the team failing. But I do think there's too much of a finger-pointing culture of blame on particularly coaches, captains. Players have got to stand up and perform, and it's very, very easy to kind of pass the buck and make a few excuses.
Warney, what about that? Is it results-driven, do you think, fair enough for the coach, or should we just players on results?
Well, it's pretty. The coach can't. I mean, the coach is there to sort of prepare the players the best way they possibly can, tactically, the way they play the game, the style of play, and how they play. Like, there's no disgrace in playing well and losing. I think the results come into it, but it's pretty hard to blame the coach for the results unless their style of play, the way they're playing, the players aren't improving under his job as the head coach. Then you have to have a look at that. There's many factors that come in it, not just results. But just thinking about that, like at the end of each summer, imagine asking
you about John Buchanan. What about you with John Buchanan, Warney?
That's what I'm thinking. Like, imagine if the boss of Cricket Australia comes and said, "What do you think about John Buchanan?" I said, "What's he still doing here? Sack him."
Out of 10, what would you have given him? Out of 10, what would you have given him?
I would have given him I don't think we can say this is a family show, Jed.
Well, speaking of results, Michael Vaughan, what about your boys? Couldn't even knock over the Kiwis, even though they're ranked #1 in the world. I mean, you guys are under some serious heat, I reckon, coming out this summer, Vaughney.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be dead honest about it. You muck around with your test team, which England have done. Rotation, went 1-0 up in India, beat Sri Lanka 2-0, beat Pakistan, West Indies, South Africa last year. They went to India, win the first test brilliantly. Joe Root gets a double century. 3 days later on the same pitch, they rotate the team. I mean, from there on, I honestly think that they've not been able to grab the team back. And once you start swapping and changing and personnel changes every other game, tactically they've got it completely wrong. You go to that day-night game in India, Ahmedabad, where it lasted 2 days. It was an absolute Bunsen burner. They played on the beach. England went with one spinner, 4 seamers. This series against New Zealand, it's been dry. I know it's surprising for you guys to recognise with that over here, but it was dry for the week leading into that first test at Lords. Played no spinner, exactly the same. Edgbaston didn't play a spinner. And the batting lineup is fragile. It's as simple as that. I mean, Butler, Stokes will come back in Wokes. Yes, they'll improve the team, but unless that batting lineup changes and can learn and understand how to get big scores against good bowling, not against the second string in Test match standard bowling, I just can't see how they can compete. I mean, it's going to be tough for them to beat India on these shores, but then to go to Australia and think they're going to get 450, 500, I just can't see it unless they make one or two. I'd bring in David Milan. I'd bring Milan back in at number 3. Apparently he's not popular, but you know what? Who gives a hoot if he scores runs? That's what I like to see in my batters. Someone who can score a few runs. He's got a bit of experience. He played well against you guys in Australia last time. I'd put him at number 3. I'd put Crawley into open. I know that's a bit of fortune for Crawley because he hasn't got so many runs, but I think he can play. And I'd just leave Burns, Crawley, Milan, Root, Stokes, Ollie Pope is staying at 6, Butler at 7, Wokes at 8. Will that be a good enough 8 to get big scores? I think it'd be a better chance than the 7 that I saw against New Zealand. They were very, very fragile. Yeah,
I mean, I look at the stats on this England batting lineup. They're all averaging about 30. Burns, 33. Dom Sibley, 30. Zach Crawley, 29. I know he can play. He's got talent. Ollie Pope, 31. Dan Lawrence, 29.
Yeah.
It's just no quality there. And I don't know why there's no depth in batting in the English lineup. I mean, to me, James Vince is not a bad player. I know he's played 13 tests, but he's got a touch of class. Yeah. Someone like Dom Sibley, he can't score. You know, you can't come to Australia with Burns and Sibley opening the batting because they can't score. He hasn't got any shots, Dom Sibley. He's not a test player. And quite frankly, I don't know how he got to that level to get picked. There's got to be a shortage of players there.
Warney, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, should they have been aggressive against New Zealand? It just didn't look like it at all.
Just their tactics at the moment too. How they did not go for 270 off 75 overs at Lords was a real shock to me. Not playing a spinner at Edgbaston as well, or Lords, where Edgbaston we know how much turns. This rotation policy, one game on, then miss a couple of games. I mean, what is that message are they sending? Oh, you have a rest now and then bring someone else in. Cricket is all about knowing your role. And once you start playing with people, standing in the slips with the same person, batting with the same person, getting to know how people react in certain situations, getting people in the middle of the group to get people going. I think England are really missing a trick. And Dom Sibley, I'm with you, Junior, and Michael Vaughan. I just don't know how he can play Test cricket. And I don't think anyone's spoken about this, is as a bowler, you worry about batsmen that can hurt you. No one's thought of this. The England middle order are suffering because all the bowlers that play against England have got their tail up and confidence up because they're not getting hurt by Burns and Sibley. They can't punish them. They can't hurt them on any level. All they can do is survive and see off the shine. That's no good. You have to put pressure on the bowler, and these two can't do that. Zach Crawley, well, I've heard some people saying, you know, he's out of form and stuff. Yeah, he might be a bit out of touch, but he is a class player. I'm with Warney. He's got to open Zach Crawley. He actually has got a good technique. He's a little bit down on form at the moment, but he's a class player and someone that England have to stick with, and he should be opening. Whether who else should come in, and there's so many different names because England have tried them, but no one has grabbed their opportunity. Johnny Bairstow, why isn't Johnny Bairstow playing Test cricket? He's actually performed extremely well. So I look at England, I think they're worried about their tactics. I don't think they're playing aggressive enough cricket. They're so worried about the performances of everyone. They're resting people just in case down the track we need them. Play your best side and play. As we all know that we played, the more you play, the more rhythm you got. And then, yeah, sure, after a bit of time, with a couple of months, 3 months, you might just want a little break for a week or so to tune up, just to freshen up. But this one off, one on, if someone come to me and said, you're not going to play the second test, before the series, not even, let's see what happens, I'd say, stick it. I'm not playing the whole series then. I'm either playing or I'm not. As a bowler, it's all about rhythm. And getting your rhythm as a bowler is about bowling and bowling and bowling and doing that in a test match.
Five men plus the keeper around the batsman.
There we go. Fleming took the last one. Merv Hughes before him.
Short-legged in that one. The Aussies are all around, and have a look at that. Fleming alongside Warne there, the last two to take a hat-trick for Australia. What a moment.
Yes, one of the great moments there. That was a 94-95 Ashes series and Warney picking up a hat-trick at the MCG. And one of the great things about our podcast, Road to the Ashes, is we get to relive some of the great series. And that was always a good one, Warney. But we'll talk about that series. Junior, I'll come to you first. I mean, that's where Slat's got a big 100 at the Gabba. You got some runs as well. But basically, that first test at the Gabba in 94-95 settled up for the rest of that series.
Yeah, I just chipped in with 140, BJ, by the way. Yes, 3-1. 3-1. Australia won that series. But you're right. Slat's just, I think the first ball he might have hit for 4 at the Gabba, the first test, and he just set the tone for the rest of the series. We were very aggressive up front and through that series. England had a real mixture of a team. They had a lot of experienced players and some young guys. But overall, I think, I mean, our batting was so positive throughout that summer. But the first test is always key, isn't it? You get off to a flyer, you put pressure on the opposition, and it's hard to bounce back from there for the England side.
Shane, you got 8 wickets in that first test at the Gabba, and I know you love bowling at the Gabba. I mean, how important do you think leading into that was to win that first test match at the Gabba and stamp your foot on that series?
I think the first session, the first day, the first test match is really important, and then it gets on to the rest of that first day and the first test match. You want to set the tone of the whole series from a team point of view, and then from an individual point of view, you want to give something for the opposition to think about straight away too, whether that you're batting, bowling, whatever it might be. You want to set that tone to the opposition to let them know what you can do. And if you do that, in the first test, you start to get the wood on it, and that's what's beautiful about a 5-test match series. You get the wood on someone, whether you're a batsman, you got the wood on a bowler, and you're on top of him, or vice versa. You can do that, and you nail them for the whole 5-test match series, and that develops through, and that can send a message to the opposition too. So that first day, the first test, the first session, and then the whole first test can set the tone for the whole series.
Australia won by 184 runs in the first test match. That was at the Gabba, Michael Vaughan. And it really, I think that series ended a few careers. Graham Gooch retired, Mike Gadding retired, Philip de Freitas didn't come back in, Devon Malcolm was sort of on the cusp and got back into the side. But Michael Vaughan, that was a tough initiation of that first test match at the Gabba in that series.
Yeah, I mean, no kind of worries that you guys won. Gucci was about 85 and Gatt was about 49 when he was playing in that last series. Not surprised you beat them. I mean, they were on the stag. There was only Gucci that used to train in that side. The rest were all on the piss.
Well, hang on. There was Athers and Hickey. That was pretty serious, weren't they?
But don't forget, Graham Gooch did hit Junior in the head with a bouncer at the Gabba too, when he made 140.
Did actually. Right in the back of that point there, I went to hook it, and I threw it a fraction early. Gucci wasn't that quick, was he? And,
look at this.
Here we go. This is embarrassing.
Sconed him.
What's he doing? What's he bowling a bouncer for with the keeper up the pegs? That actually hurt.
Hey, Warney, I also want to bring in a dismissal of yours. Alex Stewart in the second innings, you bowled him with a flipper. I know you'd bowled that flipper before that, but I love it the way that you set him up with that delivery. That cut shot went first, and then bang, as we just saw it. I mean, is that something that you really developed on in the series before against the West Indies?
Yeah, it was something, you know, the Boxing Day 92, you've got to have the confidence to bowl some of these deliveries. They're not that easy to bowl, and I didn't really have the confidence 91, 92 against Indians, then in Sri Lanka, and then coming back and getting picked back in the side. I remember it was just before lunch. We're bowling to Richie Richardson. The West Indies were chasing a total of around 300 on the last day, and I just set Richie up nice for it, and I just had to have the kahunas to try and bowl it. And I managed to land one, and I knocked Richie Richardson over 92 Boxing Day test. And from that moment on, I suppose I had the confidence in the flipper then to bowl it. And that one there you just saw was probably one of the better ones I bowled at international cricket. I set him up nicely for it. Doesn't always work like that, but it was nice when it does.
I reckon Alex Stewart and Darryl Cullen, they were probably the two batsmen, top order batsmen, that could not pick that flipper. You got them out a few times, didn't you, those two?
You could yell out from slip and say, here comes the flipper halfway through my run-up, June.
They try and pull a half volley, bang, out, LBW bowl, 1 or 2.
And Michael Vaughan, it was always difficult for England to come back in that series. I mean, they'd lost heavily at the Gabba and then they got beaten at the MCG as well. I mean, Australia obviously played well at the MCG. Warney got a hat-trick at the MCG, but it's very hard to, if you lose that first test match massively, to back it up, you know, going into Melbourne.
Yeah, the start, as Warney said, is the key. If you can get out of the traps and just get something from Brisbane. The only time in my lifetime Really, 86, 87, I wasn't really that much into cricket. 2010, 11, England got that draw in Brisbane, went on to win the Ashes. So the first test is the key. That era and that 90s period when you guys started to play incredible cricket, I was just a whippersnapper in county cricket. I'm not just saying it because you guys are on the show, but it was then that I started to realise how cricket should be played. You know, from the late 80s, early 90s, I was brought up in Yorkshire playing dogged, kind of determined cricket. And then all of a sudden I started to see a team play with a bit more aggression, a bit more flamboyancy. And then Bevan came to Yorkshire, Lehman came to Yorkshire, and suddenly started to teach us younger Yorkshire players how to be a bit more aggressive. So I don't want to blow too much smoke up your arse, but you actually did us a favour in the UK. You taught quite a lot of us young England players how to try and play the game.
MCG, Warney, obviously I've got to come to you with that hat-trick, the MCG. Junior was just saying they weren't high calibre batsmen, but hey, you still got to get them, don't you?
I did not say that. I didn't say that. All I could
bowl was De Freitas did. Yeah, all you can do is bowl to who you're batting against. And if England, you know, Alex Stewart's not a bad player, June, but
I didn't say that.
This one, it was Darren Gough. He was actually having a good tour. He just nicked one. He could have played a miss, but he nicked a great catch from Ian Healy. And then Devon Malcolm come looking like Robocop with that much padding on him. Look at him, he's facing me. And the keg on legs, David Boone takes an absolute screamer. It was his birthday. And we had a couple of quiet ales, as Booney used to like to do at the end.
You looked a bit nervous there, Warney, before the hat-trick ball. What was going through your mind? What delivery to bowl? Was that the case?
Yeah, I was trying to think if I bowl a big leg break, he's most likely to miss it.
Yep.
If I don't quite land a flipper straight away, it might slide down the leg or be too short. So I thought the best one was just to bowl an overspinner, just a straight one that would bounce if he plays a bit low, because I thought he's just going to come out and put his front foot out and defend. So if I bowled one that would bounce a little bit, I thought that was the best chance of trying to edge it, or, you know, hit one to you at bat pad on the offside, but he hit it to Booney on the onside, and he took a screamer.
Good catch.
And then Australia won that second Test match, Junior. The third Test match, SCG, was drawn. Fourth Test match, Adelaide, England bounced back. But one of the big things of the Adelaide Test match was they had Devon Malcolm. And I always think you've got to have a quick bowler, someone that can, you know, scare batsmen and might be a bit expensive, but it's got to be like a Jofra Archer scenario.
Well, that's right. I mean, in Australia, the ball's not going to swing much. We know that. The Kookaburra ball's not going to do much apart from the first hour. So you need someone with pace and bounce. Jofra Archer is exactly the right call for this summer coming up. But Devon Malcolm bowled really quickly in that Test match. I remember there's a real southerly breeze coming from the city end. He was bowling with the breeze. And he was bowling genuine pace. He always had a bit of pace, Devon Malcolm. He's a little bit erratic, but on his day, he was quite a dangerous bowler, and that was his Test match. He bowled really well.
Michael Vaughan, you got to have a quick bowler when you're coming out here. I know you got Anderson, but Stuart Broad and Archer and these type of guys, a bit like a Devon Malcolm in that series, had raw pace, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it's the only way to play. I mean, I don't think you need four of them, but at least one or two. I mean, and England this time round will need a Mark Wood, a Jofra Archer. Ollie Stone's just gone down with a stress fracture, so he'll be missing, I would think. They might try and get him back. But yeah, pace in Australia. Big Dev was underutilised by England. You guys should think of how many Test matches Devon Malcolm played. It was nowhere near enough for the ability and what he could do to opposing dressing rooms. You know, pace is the one thing that gets the dressing room just a little bit rattled. England certainly underutilised Devon.
Warney?
Yeah, just talking about those bowling and Jofra Archer and that, I think, look, we've been pretty harsh on England's top order batting, and rightly so. They've been pretty ordinary, their batting. But to win in Australia, you need to take 20 wickets. You might not need to make the big 400s and 500s and all that in Australia in the first innings if your bowling attack is good. And England have got a quality bowling attack. Yeah, Jimmy Anderson and Broad haven't performed that well away from home, or especially here in Australia, but they're getting better. Even though they're older, they're still bowling well. So, you know, something like Anderson, Broad, Archer with his pace, Stokes, and then a spinner. They've got to play a spinner. Well, if you're going to win in Australia, you need pace and you need spin, because you can't have too much the same. That's one thing I look, whether Wokes, Broad, Anderson, Stone, these sort of guys, it's all the same. They need either a left arm or extreme pace like an Archer, and they need a spinner. Well, because you don't just pick a side for the first side.
What's the spin threat going to be? I mean, you've got Jack Leach, I guess, is the number one choice. Would that be right, Warney and Vaughan? Is he the one? But he's more of a holding spinner, isn't he? He's not really a wicket taker.
Yeah, I think Jack Leach, Vaughan might better, but I think Bess has shown a little bit too. But I think Jack Leach is the number one, because if you lose the toss and you bowl first, you need someone that can be able to hold up and end for a while. Give the quicks a bit of a break. And from a tactical point of view, you might just want to change the pace of the game and just get a spinner on. And Joe Root's not good enough to do that. He's good enough to throw the ball to break a partnership every now and then or something like that, but not to play as the main spinner to bowl 15 overs or so. Half a dozen overs to try and break a partnership, sure. But they have to play a spinner here. They have to play Archer here. And there's two. There's only a couple other spots up for grabs. So who do they go to? Anderson will get one. And then that last spot, is that Broad, is that Wokes, or is it someone else? But I think, you know, when you've got a good bowling side like England have, you'll always be competitive. So anyone that writes off England and says England have got no chance, I'm not sure about that unless their bowlers aren't fit. If they come with that bowling attack, they'll be very, very competitive.
Yeah, no doubt, boys. It's going to be a big summer coming up. Shane Warne, Michael Vaughan, thank you very much for your time today. Love your comments. And Warney, we love reliving that 94-95 series and that hat-trick, the MCG Junior. Thanks for coming in, mate. Always like your support. And thanks everyone for listening, and thanks everyone for watching. Remember, you can subscribe to the Road to the Ashes podcast on your favourite podcast provider. We'll see you next time.